It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind that lulled the city into a false sense of peace. Officer David Harper, a seasoned patrolman, was driving along the usual route, the hum of the engine filling the silence of his cruiser. The streets were clear, the sun shining down on a seemingly ordinary day, when his attention was drawn to a car that seemed to be driving a bit too fast for the area. He flicked on his siren and pulled up behind the car. The driver, a woman in her early 30s with dark sunglasses, was barely noticeable as she slowed down and pulled to the side of the road. David sighed, preparing for the routine stop. It was likely just another driver who was in a rush, maybe running late for work. He approached the vehicle, his hand resting on his holster out of habit, though his posture was relaxed. As he knocked on the window, the woman rolled it down slowly. She was well-dressed, her black blazer pressed and sharp, and her eyes, though behind sunglasses, seemed to hold an air of quiet authority. There was something about her that immediately caught David off guard. "Good morning, ma'am. I clocked you going 50 in a 35 zone," David said, his tone professional but with a slight edge of irritation that came from routine traffic stops. The woman nodded, not offering any immediate apology. "I apologize, officer. I didn't realize I was speeding," she replied in a calm, almost detached voice. David scanned the car briefly, noticing a few files and paperwork neatly stacked on the passenger seat. Everything about her demeanor screamed confidence, but it wasn't the typical energy of someone who'd just been caught speeding. As he waited for her to pull out her license, something made him pause. He looked at her face more closely, trying to place her. "Can I see your ID, please?" he asked again, though this time with more curiosity. She nodded and reached into her bag, pulling out a sleek, black leather wallet. As she handed over her ID, something on the driver's license caught David's eye. The name on the ID was unfamiliar, but the title next to it made his heart skip a beat. "Chief of Police?" he muttered under his breath. The woman smiled faintly, sensing his confusion. "Yes," she replied calmly. "I just moved to the city. My name is Amelia Grant. I'm the new chief of police." David blinked. His mind raced. Chief of police? But she was just a regular woman pulling over for speeding. How could she be the new chief? And why was she driving herself in such an unassuming vehicle? Before he could ask any more questions, his radio crackled with a call for backup. His sergeant's voice came through, making David's confusion deepen even further. "Harper, report back to the station. We've got a meeting with the new chief in 15 minutes. David stared at the woman for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he stammered, still unsure what to make of this encounter. "I didn't realize." She laughed softly. "It's all right, officer. I get that a lot. Just doing my job, same as you." As David stepped back, his mind was buzzing. Was this a setup? Why was the new chief of police driving herself around in an ordinary car like this? Was he being pranked? But Amelia was already starting her car, her eyes fixed ahead, as if this was just another normal day for her. David watched her drive away, unsure if what had just happened was real or some bizarre dream. The following morning, Officer David Harper couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. Amelia Grant, the woman who had been pulled over for speeding, had simply driven away, leaving him standing there, still processing the surreal experience. He had tried to brush it off, but something about the whole interaction nagged at him. Why had she seemed so calm? And why hadn't anyone mentioned that a new chief was in town? As he walked into the precinct later that day, the usual buzz of officers filling out reports and discussing the day's calls felt strangely muted. David couldn't focus, his thoughts constantly drifting back to the traffic stop. "Hey, Harper, you good?" his partner, Officer Luke Sanders, asked as he approached. David nodded but couldn't hide the confusion on his face. "You hear about the new chief?" Luke raised an eyebrow. "New chief?" "Yeah, but no one's really talking about it. I guess they figured we'd meet her at the big meeting today. Why? David hesitated for a moment, then lowered his voice. I think I met her yesterday. Luke stared at him, blinking in disbelief. What do you mean? She was just appointed, right? How would you meet her? I pulled her over for speeding, David admitted quietly. I thought she was just some regular driver, but when I asked for her ID, she handed me a license that said Chief of Police. Luke's expression shifted from confusion to concern. Wait. You're telling me the new chief was just driving around like a regular person, and you stopped hers? David nodded, his mind still reeling from the strange encounter.
Yeah.
She didn't seem like a big shot or anything. She was calm, collected, and he trailed off, trying to find the right words. She didn't act like any of the other high-ranking officers I've met. That's wild, Luke said slowly. But I guess if she's the chief, she can do whatever she wants, right? David wasn't so sure. I don't know. It felt off. Why would she be out in an ordinary car? Why not in a police vehicle or a marked car? Before Luke could respond, the loudspeaker crackled, signaling the start of the department-wide meeting. The officers shuffled into the conference room, where David was immediately struck by the unexpected sight at the front of the room. Amelia Grant stood at the podium, dressed in the same sharp black blazer from yesterday, her posture commanding and confident. Her calm demeanor hadn't changed, but there was an undeniable air of authority now as she addressed the room. She was younger than most of the department's senior officers, with sharp features and dark hair pulled back into a professional ponytail. There was something almost magnetic about her presence, but it was also clear that the room had grown silent, unsure of what to expect. Good morning, everyone, she began, her voice firm but welcoming. I'm Chief Amelia Grant, and I know some of you may have heard rumors or are uncertain about me, but let me make one thing clear. I'm here to work with you, not above you. David watched as she spoke, captivated by her confidence. She wasn't just a figurehead. She meant every word. This wasn't just about titles or rank. It was about making real, meaningful change within the department. As your chief, she continued, I believe in leading by example. I don't expect anything from you that I wouldn't do myself. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but together, we'll turn this department around. We'll focus on transparency, trust, and... David's thoughts drifted as he recalled their earlier interaction. This was the same woman who had calmly apologized for speeding, who hadn't seemed to care about her status. And now, here she was, commanding the room with an ease that was nothing short of impressive. She paused, scanning the room, her gaze meeting David's for a brief second. It was a look of understanding, like she already knew what he was thinking. She smiled faintly before continuing. Let's get to work. The meeting continued, but David's mind couldn't focus on her speech. All he could think about was what had just unfolded. How could someone like Amelia Grant, so grounded, so calm, become the chief of police? What was her backstory? Why had she chosen to enter the department this way, with no flashy introduction or grand gestures? And then it hit him. The city didn't need another showy, self-important leader. They needed someone who would connect with the officers on the ground, someone who could earn their respect through action, not just title. Amelia Grant wasn't just the chief because of her rank. She was there because she belonged there. David didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. This new chief was going to change everything, and he was eager to see how. Weeks passed since the meeting with Chief Amelia Grant, and with each day, the city's police department began to feel different. There was a subtle shift in the air, a newfound energy that had been lacking before her arrival. Officers who had once complained about the lack of leadership and direction now felt a renewed sense of purpose. But it wasn't just the change in atmosphere that caught David's attention. It was the way Amelia operated, the way she led. She had made it clear from the start that she wasn't interested in playing the political game. She didn't want to be the typical top-down boss who gave orders from behind an office desk. Amelia was present, active, and often out on the streets, riding alongside officers during patrols. She would show up at crime scenes, not to take charge, but to observe, to listen, and to offer advice when it was needed. David found himself working with her more often than he had expected. She had a way of making the toughest situations seem manageable, and her calm presence was a stabilizing force during some of the department's most challenging days. Whether it was a high-speed chase, a domestic dispute, or a routine traffic stop, Amelia was there, not as a figurehead, but as a real, active part of the team. One evening, David and his partner Luke were called out to a robbery in progress at a local convenience store. As they pulled up, they saw a group of officers surrounding the building, weapons drawn, waiting for a suspect to emerge. The tension was palpable, and David could feel his heart racing in his chest. This was the kind of situation that could quickly spiral out of control. But then, through the chaos, he spotted Amelia. She wasn't standing back, watching from the sidelines as many senior officers would have done. Instead, she was in the thick of it, calmly directing the officers, coordinating with the SWAT team, and giving precise, clear instructions over the radio. David was taken aback. Most chiefs would be in their offices, waiting for updates, but here was Amelia, as involved and invested as anyone else on the scene. As the suspect was apprehended without incident, David couldn't help but be impressed by how smoothly the situation had been handled. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. Amelia had led with quiet authority, her decisions based on logic and a deep understanding of the job. She had earned the trust of every officer there without ever having to demand it. Later that night, as they wrapped up the paperwork, David found himself standing next to her, his curiosity finally getting the better of him. "Chief," he began, trying to find the right words. "I have to ask, why did you choose this path? I mean, most people in your position wouldn't be caught dead on the front lines like that. You don't have to be out here with us." Amelia looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "Because this is where the work is done, David. This is where it matters. I didn't become chief to sit behind a desk and make decisions from afar. I became chief because I care about the people who work here, and I care about the city we're sworn to protect." David nodded slowly, impressed by her answer. "But what made you want to become chief in the first place? Most people don't aim for that kind of position unless they're hungry for power." She smiled faintly, a look of quiet amusement in her eyes. "It's not about power, David. It's about change." The department was stuck in a rut, and it needed someone to shake things up. "I didn't want to be the loudest person in the room. I just wanted to do the work that mattered." There was a pause before she added, "And honestly, I wanted to prove that you don't have to fit a certain mold to lead. You don't have to be the typical tough guy or untouchable authority figure. You just have to be real." David couldn't help but smile. She was unlike any leader he had ever encountered. Amelia wasn't just their chief. She was a mentor, a guide, and someone who inspired loyalty simply by being herself. In her presence, it was clear that leadership didn't come from a title. It came from action, from making the tough decisions and standing alongside your team, not above them. As the days turned into weeks, David saw the department transform in ways he hadn't expected. Morale was up, crime rates were down, and the officers were more unified than ever. Amelia's presence had brought a sense of purpose to the precinct, and though there were still challenges to face, it was clear to everyone that the city was in good hands. One afternoon, as David sat at his desk, he overheard a conversation between two rookie officers. They were talking about the new chief, about how different she was from anyone they had ever known. "I thought she'd be like all the other chiefs, you know," one of the rookies said. "But she's not. She's like one of us." "Yeah," the other rookie agreed. She's the real deal. David smiled to himself. They were right. Amelia Grant had come into the department as a stranger, a mystery, but she had quickly proven that she wasn't just the new chief. She was exactly what they needed, someone who would lead with heart, courage, and an unwavering commitment to the job. And as David thought back to that first traffic stop, he realized that Amelia wasn't just the future of the department. She was its present. The change they had all been waiting for had arrived, quietly and without fanfare. And it was exactly what they needed.